Hello, my fellow schizotypals. Did you hear that noise? What up, doe? And welcome back to Highlight with Carlisle Fletcher and with Jules, who's in the studio today.
Hey.
He's a fellow artist. He does cool drone footage, and hopefully we'll be featuring more of his content. We've already been published as a duo in the Czech Republic with photography and writing. So we've already done professional work, but we're trying to build that into the Highlight experience, the Highlight brand, the Highlight media campaign, the moguls. Yeah. So you can find him at the Firekeeper on Instagram, TikTok, and various things. Links are around. But yeah, that's Jules. Highlight team. Yay! You can be seen in the mirror. You can also come over if you'd like.
Oh, you can see me in the mirror?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You're in the shot.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's why. Yeah.
I don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. So, cool. That's Jules. So what we're doing today is we're going to be going through some tweeter studies. Because I've been, going through the medical research on your favorite cannabis. And we're just going through the literature on that. And then there's a book I wrote about New York when I was like 19 in 2 weeks. When I was starving. And that was just a fever dream, and we're going to read through some of that. And then we're going to end off with Stars Hollow, because those people were nice enough to let me use their music, and I don't know why. That was a mistake on their part, but fuck yeah. Anyways, this is the Patreon that we got, so please support us here. This is going to go directly to Highlight Adventures and funding this fucking show and getting a better mic and all that, etc., etc. Hey, listen, if you pay the fucking money, there will not be an air conditioner in the background, etc., etc. But until then, this is just, it's a it's jerry-rigged. And so, yeah, we got 3 tiers. We got like a $3 tier, $5, and a $20. It doesn't matter if you give us any fucking money. Awesome, dude. And you know what? Just hit me up, and I'll give you like access to whatever fucking material you want. We got music videos. We got music. We got da 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 da. We got books. TikTok out ready. We already got 3 videos up. Hope to be shooting more today after this, and that's like its own little thing. And there's the Firekeeper on TikTok, so follow him as well. But yeah, that's the show. That's the things. That's what we got going on. Let's break into the news. So this is from the Jammin' Network. That's what I'm gonna fucking say. And it's the Association of Air Pollution Exposure in Childhood and Adolescence with Psychopathology at the Transition to Adulthood. So the question is exposure to outdoor air pollution in childhood and adolescence associated with the development of psychopathology at the transition to adulthood? And in a study of 2,039 UK-born children followed up for 20 years, early life exposure to nitrogen oxides was significantly associated with general psychopathology at 18 years of age, representing greater internalizing, externalizing, and thought disorder symptoms. The associations were not attributable to individual or family-level factors or to disadvantageous neighborhood characteristics. So, I mean, it's like pollution is a major threat. And I think that this is a very under-discussed aspect of things. So what I want to be hitting home with this sort of material, we've talked about pollution a lot, holistic living. And the idea that what does our lifestyle contribute to our illness? And how do we poison ourselves through decision-making? Because I think that that's going to be, if you can address that can be a real access for change. So it's like, say that it's like, yeah, pollution's a major issue. Well, then how do we minimize pollution in areas with high family count? How do we do that? Probably cost some money, but like, why the fuck not? Why always be repairing roads that are never fixed and not invest in limiting exposure of children to hazardous materials? But at 18 years of age, participants were interviewed about past year's symptoms of mental disorder. These methods have been previously described, yada, yada, yada. And this is just like, the technical side of like what they were monitoring. And so again, family level covariates, including socioeconomic status and psychiatric history. And so also including controlling for smoking, early emotional and behavioral problems, all that. So it's like, it's controlling for all these things, and it's still pollution. This is how they measure disadvantage. I don't think that this is going to be good to read aloud, but it is good to read. That's why it's there. So This longitudinal cohort study of air pollution exposure in childhood and adolescence and psychopathology at the transition to adulthood generated two main findings. First, that my big-ass head is right in the way of the text. That was a very important thing that they found out in that research. This longitudinal cohort study of air pollution exposure in child and adolescents and psychopathy. First, youths exposed to higher levels of NOx and PM2.5 air pollution had greater levels of general psychopathology at 18 years of age, driven primarily by greater rates of externalizing and thought disorder symptoms. Co-pollution models identified NOx as the most robust factor. Second, NOx psychopathology associations were found to be independent of urbanicity, individual and family risk, such as family psychiatric history and disadvantageous neighborhood characteristics correlated with air pollution, including deprivation, dilapidation, disconnection, and dangerousness. These results collectively suggest that youths persistently exposed to moderate levels of NOx air pollution may experience greater overall liability to psychiatric illness by young adulthood, a liability independent of other individual, family, and neighborhood influences on mental health. The association of NOx with psychopathology was modest, suggesting that outdoor air pollution is unlikely to be a major etiological factor in an individual's psychiatric illness risk across short time spans. For comparison, the associated size is less than half of that seen for the well-described non-modifiable risk factor of family history of mental illness. Nevertheless, the association size matches that of other neurotoxins implicated in psychopathology risk, particularly lead. So it's not as bad as genetics, but it is like as bad as fucking lead. Notably, when exposures are widespread, even small elevations in risk can result in significantly increases in the burden of disease at the population level. The WHO estimate that 91% of the global population is exposed to outdoor air pollutions in excess of current guidelines. Given the ubiquity of this exposure, air pollution could represent a meaningful contributor to the global burden of psychiatric illness, particularly in poor air quality regions. So, again, pollution, real fucking bad. And I mean, again, like, we can talk about, like, the risk factor with, like, weed and other lifestyle choices, but, like, pollution is a major fucking factor in all of our lives. We're all 84.1% of Americans drive every day. You know? So, like, this is what we're spitting into the world. And this is our lifestyle. If you're talking about praxis, if you're talking about political action, that's your political action you choose to do. And then they did another longitudinal twin study on twins in the UK and Wales. And what they found was out of 2,063 participants, sex was evenly distributed. So together, NO2 and NOx statistically explained 60% of the association between urbanicity and adolescent psychotic experiences. No evidence of confounding by family socioeconomic status, family psychiatric history, maternal psychosis, childhood psychotic symptoms, adolescent smoking and substance dependence, or neighborhood socioeconomic status, crime, and social conditions occurred. So there was no correlation between any of those things, but there was with pollution, which is fucking crazy. Like, because it's like all this other stuff is always discussed as like the front line of like, why are kids crazy? Why are people like falling apart? Why is all this? It's like, well, literally, what changed? You know? What changed dramatically? No, nobody in human history has ever lived with a fucking car. Because I mean, also like thinking about like the car versus the horse is that it's like, you know, we always complain that the horses are stinky and noisy. Have you fucking heard a car without a muffler? And also, yeah, maybe the horse is stinky, but I don't think that the smell of shit is making you schizophrenic. You know? So, the etymological research also it would be high quality noise. The horse is considered a high quality noise like a bird. So it would be something that would be considered relaxing, actually. But etymological research to date has mostly examined adverse social features in the social environment, such as neighborhood deprivation and crime. However, a key feature of the urban environment remains under research. Air pollution is a major worldwide health issue, particularly in cities, where pollution levels frequently exceed limits set by the WHO and the European Union. Primarily, air pollutants are typically released through combustion processes. Principal sources include road transport, industry, and domestic activity. In addition, some air pollutions are secondarily formed in the atmospheres through a series of phytochemical reactions. Pollution has long been implicated in a range of physical health problems, including cardiovascular and respiratory disease. Growing evidence now links air pollution to psychiatric disorders. Associations have been documented between air pollution and anxiety, depression, autism spectrum disorder, and Alzheimer-like disease. A handful of studies have also examined associations between air pollution and adult psychiatric disorders, but findings are inconsistent. And I want to double back here to the previous research that we were discussing, which is that there is no short-term effect. So yeah, I guess it's fine if you move into the city to go to college. I guess it's fine if you somewhere outside of it. But for people who actually fucking live in it, yeah, it's a serious issue. So it's a long-term exposure issue. It's a long-term quality of life issue in this region that we're not treating like it's livable, really. And so few studies have used high resolution measures of air pollution to associate with psychosis, and none have examined the association with adult psychotic experiences such as hearing voices and extreme paranoia. These early psychotic phenomenon are a developmental risk factor for adult psychotic disorder, no shit, and other serious mental health problems, and are thought to lie on an etiological continuum with clinical psychosis. So this is like, the sliding scale, and it started by pollution. So this is 2,232 children interviewed repeatedly from birth to 18 years of age. So this is kids, and they're seeing pollution, outdoor air pollutions with NO2, NOx, PM2.5, and PM10. And they've been, so those were linked in the sample in 2012, and they were testing the hypothesis that this would be correlated to psychotic experiences. And what they found is that when they were measuring the city and urban and rural areas, yes, there was urbanicity was significantly associated with levels of NO2, PM2.5, and PM10. And they show that adolescents exposed to the highest quartile levels of air pollution reported the higher rates of psychotic experiences than adolescents exposed to a lower level of pollution. And associations among NO2, NOx, and PM2.5 exposures in adolescent psychotic experiences were slightly attenuated, but remained significant after adjusting for family-level factors, childhood psychotic symptoms, adolescent substance use, so cannabis, neighborhood factors, and after considering all potential confounders simultaneously. So, we are talking about substance use. We are aware of that. Pollution's still a really big fucking issue. Not talking about it, not discussing that. So it's how the fuck are you pretending to care about children when you're not caring about something that 84.6% of people do? Not everybody smokes weed every day. It's actually a very small minority of people who smoke weed every day. Everybody fucking drives. Everybody fucking drives. Children drive. So why don't we shift to that conversation? Because it's the climate change is one thing, and you can have that conversation, but have the ground level conversation. You don't have to go to the atmosphere to realize that our lifestyle is sick. You can just see it. You can just witness the effects of it and say that it's maybe we could do some change. So, and if there's lower pollution, then it's not significantly associated, but higher pollution, yes. So, yeah, if you have a high enough amount. And they kept repeating, this is so they repeated the analysis continually and found the same thing. But, so the PM2.5, they were found if they controlled for NOx, then it wasn't really relevant. But in contrast, NOx was still relevant, controlling for PM2.5, which shows that NOx, NO2 might be a much larger threat than that particular pollutant, but we don't know if that pollutant is, it's probably still a threat. It's probably still a threat. And so, to me, what I'd say is that it's when we're looking at this, what we shouldn't be seeing is that cities cause psychosis. What we shouldn't be seeing is that urban experiences cause psychosis. What we should be seeing is that pollution does. What we should be seeing is that cars do. This is why we have streetcars. This is why we have trains. Yeah, they're noisy and they're messy, and maybe it's public transit and it's not ideal, but it lowers the burden load of these things on people so that children don't have to be exposed to as much of it, and you don't either. And so does it explain the association between urbanity and adolescent psychotic experiences? So, after considering potential confounders and the mediator pathways of NO2 remain statistically significant, which each explaining 55% and 58% of the association between urban residency and adolescent psychotic experiences, respectively. Nitrogen dioxide and NOx were, of course, highly correlated. When NO2 and NOx were simultaneously entered as mediators. Together, they statistically explain 60% of the adjusted association between most urban residency and adolescent psychotic experiences. So this is this is most of it, guys. You know, it's like, so again, we're talking about weed. Not every single person who fucking did a mass murder smoked weed, but I'm assuming that a lot of them grew up in cities and are on psychiatric medication. You know, and it's like, well, that's a conspiracy theory. That's some crazy shit to talk about, because it's like, well, you know, they just happen to be on pills. You know, and if mass shooters just happen to be on pills, well, then schizophrenics just happen to smoke weed, just like they just happen to smoke cigarettes, just like they happen to drink water, like you or I. Because these people just happen to do things, just like anything else. And, like, trying to find an explanation in lifestyle, I think is so fucking pointless. Because it's like, well, Americans are sedentary and obese. And it's like, well, you ripped up the ways to get around by foot. You made everything car dependent, and you gave them no opportunity to just have exercise be a part of their lifestyle. That's not their fault. You're a bad person, and you designed a bad game, and that means that your players are going to be sick. That's like if you took away movement from football. You know, like, it just doesn't. Yeah, all professional football players are going to look different because they're no longer running, because you broke the fucking game. Several mechanisms might explain the associations between air pollutions and adolescent psychotic experiences. Air pollutions have potent oxidative effects on lipids and proteins. Biopsy and postmortem studies of children and adolescents have linked air pollution with disruption of the nasal epithelium and blood-brain barrier, as well as neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration in regions including the frontal cortex and olfactory bulb. Although the etiology of psychotic experiences remains equivocal, subtle abnormality in brain structure and function have been identified, such as neuroinflammatory markers and aberrant prefrontal activity. Thus, air pollution could increase the risk for psychotic experiences by directly influencing the brain. Such influences are likely to be cumulative. Meanwhile, so compare this to in Denver, where they did EKG controlling for other substances on teenagers and found that teenagers who smoked pots had no brain differences from regular adults. Meanwhile, teenage alcoholics did. However, in vitro rodent studies have demonstrated widespread neuroinflammation and neurotoxic effects even after short-term exposure to air pollutions. In addition, higher developmental exposure to air pollutions has been linked to lower serum vitamin D levels, potentially through reduced sunlight exposure, which has in turn been associated with increased risk for childhood psychotic experiences. Childhood psychotic experiences. The association among air pollution, vitamin D, and psychotic experiences warrant research. I mean, of course, like, this is where studies get fucking fraud. Of course it warrants research. Furthermore, NO2 and NOx are strongly linked to vehicle emissions. No shit, we should research that. Let's find out if that comes from the fucking cars. Findings therefore implicate road traffic and, by extension, noise pollution. Noise pollution has been linked to stress, sleep disturbance, and cognitive impairments among children and adolescents, which have in turn been associated with subclinical psychotic phenomena. Therefore, the association of NO2 and NOx with adolescent psychotic experiences may have been linked more generally to road traffic and noise pollution experienced by participants living near busy roads. Alright, so that was just like a vomit of information, but getting onto this study. So this one is a larger study in the UK, about 3 different regions in the UK that are measured for sound. And it's a park, a garden, and something else. But across all participants, the main reason that people were in one of these places was for the place itself. To relax or to read was for the 4th biggest reason, and to have some peace and quiet was the 5th biggest reason overall. This shows the value of restoring and importance of low sound levels for people's motivation in using these places, although many other reasons also exist for visiting a place. Reasons for the visit also varied substantially across the three places, showing the different benefits the terms of space can bring. For the garden, the majority of visitors were tourists who have heard of the place hence visiting for the place. But for those more familiar with the place, they sought the peace and quiet it offered while on a break. This could be interpreted as the place providing a feeling of being away, which is one of the four components that contribute to a restorative element in attention restoration theory. Indeed, even a tribal guide describes it as tucked away at the end of an old town close. This walled garden has been laid out in the style of the 17th century, with gravel paths, neatly trimmed shrubs, herbs, and flowers, and mature trees. A hidden gem, and an oasis of tranquility amid the bustle of the Royal Mile. Thus, even the tourist may visit an opportunity to be away from other environmental types and hint at the importance of relative quiet or tranquility, which the garden was acoustically assessed to have. For the park, the opportunity to relax was the most frequently mentioned reason for being in the place, with relaxation commonly associated with restoring restorative components and little need for restoration. The convenience of the place also seemed to be important to many participants, as they would stop to rest there as it was near to another event or place they were going to /from, or lived in the surrounding accommodation. This can relate to the place's compatibility with what an individual wants, another component of restorative environments, as it offers the chance to relax in a convenient location given the time available to them. Similarly, the location of the square was the main reason for use, particularly for eating food and drink, and then for providing an opportunity to be in a social environment. Thus, the place was compatible with their needs, but this time from a food and social perspective rather than necessarily the need to relax. And the thing that I want to bring up here is that, so we're talking about pollution and how pollution is a major threat, but noise pollution as well, because we've talked about that on earlier episodes of the show, how about noise pollution is linked to stress and it's linked to poor, like inflammatory reactions and things like that. And I'm just going to pull up from a private conversation that I was having with somebody. I was showing them pictures of Detroit, and so if you're looking at a historical map of Detroit, before, I think this might be when it was French. Look at this, right? It's a clusterfuck. So you're looking at a clusterfuck. But only this is going to be noisy, because that's Campus Martius. So, it all comes together in these main roads to this, one area that's a little bit more developed. And you'd probably get dB of, a car. Because you'd probably just hear people screaming and shit like that. You're not going to get, the most noisy thing. It looks like the dock's pretty fucking noisy, because it's river transport and et cetera, et cetera. But you can contrast that with so first off, this picture, this is going to be a lot fucking noisier, and this is just the modern, this is what you're looking at today. This is going to be a lot noisier, because you got all these cars, you got this big ass fuck off park, you got these big ass fuck off buildings, and you're just going to get a lot more, it's going to be much more unpleasant, because it's going to be this is more dense, sure, but it's not going to be as dense in the one area, making this noise tunnel that you can never escape from. And I think that can be really seen in shit like this, where it's just this awful fucking view from a parking garage, where it's just muddy and dirty, and there's just cars. I'm seeing 20 cars there, and then 15 cars over there, and no people. I don't see a single fucking person outside in this entire city, but I see a parking garage, I see a parking garage over there. I see a lot here. I see an empty space here that's just filled with rain. And I see, it just seems like a fucking headache. So compare that, that's where it's cities don't have to look that way. Detroit did not look that way. I'm assuming that wherever you lived, if you live in a city and it looks like just concrete, did not look that way. So before, there were places in the city that were quiet. And there were just places where it's you're I want to go to the country to relax. It's well, you could also just go walk 2 miles to this part of the city that's essentially just the woods. We have Palmer Park like that now, but a lot of cities just have that inbuilt. That's when you go to Europe and everybody's oh, this looks so fucking different, because they have places for people to live. They have these small little neighborhoods where people don't leave. They have these things that are just slowed down. There's not just a highway to rush through them. They're just actually incorporated into a lifestyle there. And that makes it so that you don't have as much just of a noise channel, And that's where it's these people are visiting urban environments for a sake of getting away, for a sake of peace, for a sake of quiet, to gather themselves. That is an important thing to do, but you don't need to drive 40 miles away to do it. So other health benefits gained from visiting these places included an increase in positive emotions, which can be associated with emotional restoration and improved well-being. In general, the language used by participants was positive, referring to increases in or more of a positive attribute rather than less of a negative attribute. Unlike much of the environmental noise literature, which talks about quiet areas or green spaces as helping to prevent and mitigate from negative feelings, the public instead focus on the positive attributes and health-promoting benefits. The concept of instauration, which was the improvement of mood or attention without a prior negative or fatigued state above a beneficial value, may also be relevant here, as people have not needed to recover, hence the natural perceived restorative outcomes, but have still improved on their already positive or neutral mood. As prior fatigue levels or emotional states were not assessed beforehand, the study cannot confirm what changes were made and whether their prior emotion was negative or positive. Thus, caution should be noted in the interpretation of these results in relation to restoration theory. However, the study does highlight the language, the public used to describe the perceived health outcomes they get from visiting these places, which can help the future experimental studies assess health outcomes by using terminology which the public associated. So, I don't want to lose your attention, and we do have a lot more to go through. So finally, the types of sound perceived, rather than just the sound levels, are important in creating a restorative experience. For example, natural soundscapes are more restorative than urban soundscapes dominated by traffic. So that's not urban soundscapes, that's urban soundscapes dominated by these unnatural boxes that go 120 miles per hour through your fucking neighborhood at 2 a.m. That's what they're talking about. And individual nature sounds of birds singing are rated highly in their perceived restorative potential. So I'm assuming something like a horse would also be, or a camel, or whatever you live, a beast of burden versus a car. And also, you don't need to dig up food. You can just fucking plant food for your horse. You don't need to go to war forever to supply your food supply your horse with fuel. Natural sounds were most frequently recalled in the garden and park than in the square, and that was the third one, and fewer vehicle sounds were heard in the morning in the garden when perceived restorative outcomes were rated. Therefore, despite visitors spending similar amounts of time in this park and square and experiencing similar sound levels both subjectively and objectively, the differences in sound types and the level of vegetation and biodiversity between the sites could in part explain the differences in perceived restorative outcomes. Further exploration of all these factors together is necessary, and only through controlling for the differing variables or systemically varying these variables can a clearer relationship between the soundscape and restoration be established before applied, if appropriately, an important criteria for identifying candidate quiet or calm areas. Imagine if every single American house got rid of the front yard. None of them have a front yard. All of that, so all the houses just get moved up to the sidewalk. And then all the backyard becomes an entire backyard. And then every backyard is just an orchard. So that every single American house, or at least in a city, has that. You know? So then there's the privacy, then there's the greenery, the trees are producing oxygen, and you also have that absorbing the pollution and absorbing the dust that's going around. So you have like a better air quality. And also, like, if you could do that in every single house, maybe you could start making more oxygen than you produce carbon dioxide. You know, you could end up maybe doing that, and like that's the advantages we're talking about. Typically, much environmental acoustics research has been focused on reactive, trying to mitigate negative health outcomes from urban noise experience. In contrast, preventative health research involving positive health outcomes from exposure to urban sounds is limited. A reconsideration of acoustic environments in terms of soundscapes, rather than environmental noise, helps readdress this imbalance and enables exploring positive health outcomes. So I thought that was fucking awesome. I liked that point a lot, and I just wanted to really, so we're done with the noise pollution. So that's air pollution, noise pollution. And then here we have noise pollution extended, what else? And then we'll end up with some weed stuff. The next stuff we have after that is weed. We have like 5 things on weed. How are we doing for time? So we're at 30. That's not bad, but we're still not off the pollution. So this is global quality of life, and you can see, so the squares are rural, the triangles are the cities. So these are the squares, and these are the triangles. And the quiet ones are the clear ones, and the noisy ones are the black ones. So you got these. So global quality of life, rural, quiet, very high. City quiet, not so much. That doesn't make sense. Why would a quiet city be below noisy city? That's fucking strange. Quiet city people hate themselves, apparently. Huh. But yeah, you can see that there's a clear, like there's a negative correlation with noise. And you can see that, like here, you know, so you got the noisy city. It's the one. It's the one that takes the hit. For physical, psychological, social, and environmental low. Global quality of life, you can see, so they got the quiet and the noisy areas contrasted, and you can see that even in the rural and the city, the quiet is heavily weighted higher. And like they never intersect, except for in social relationships where rural people, quiet and loud, consider themselves more connected. So the studies examines the relationship with acoustic environment and found that noise-induced annoyance was negatively correlated to health-related quality of life. Nobody likes transport noise. No shit. But what they were also talking about was this idea of having a soundscape. So what they were talking about is that it's like if you're in a neighborhood and you can hear like your neighbors like, you know, like tending to their farm animals or like, you know, like calling in their children for dinner or like something like that, it gives you like a sense of community and makes you feel less isolated. Which is like, you know, essentially what an urban experience is where it's like, you know, you feel connected to the people next to you because you can see them and you know, like, you're not alone. So I thought that was interesting because it's not just about quiet, it's also about this like sort of wholesome sound, which again, I think is common between urban and rural areas. It's about having a healthy neighborhood, which you can do anywhere. And this is what they said. For example, the sound of a distant neighbor's farmers' children playing outside at night may reduce feelings of isolation. As rural residents hear the activities of the community for miles around, they are connected to places and activities inaccessible to other senses. When industrial plants are installed and the nighttime soundscape is dominated by mechanical noise, the listening radius shrinks substantially, and fainter sounds and those from greater distances are lost. This makes a sense of place not much different from suburban or even urban living. But again, I would say, but you can reverse that in both places. You can do that in both places. But yeah, so it's not simply the amount of noise, it's also the quality of noise. It's like what people want to hear. So it's like while you might not mind a noisy city of people just chatting, you're going to mind it if it's just like just fucking industrial noise the entire time. Because it's annoying. Nobody likes construction noise. But yeah, so that's I'm kind of losing focus to be able to read that dense of literature. So I assume that you're losing focus as a fucking listener. But so let's get into some weed stuff. I think we might be skipping the book. But yeah, so promotes oral ulcer healing. So you know, ulcers and all that. It's like, hey, CBD might help because it might help. It might help because it limits inflammation. Then we got a study that's saying that. So yes, depression predicts cannabis use, but if you control for other substance use, there's no correlation to suicidal ideation. So if you control for alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, it fully explains the association between cannabis and suicidal ideation in teenagers. But yeah, depressed kids will smoke pot. Whoa! And so also we have here the difference of, so you have schizoaffective and schizophrenic people who smoke pot and people who don't. The difference was no longer statistically significant when controlling for 3 covariates. So cannabis use may not be a good predictor of length of stay once covariates are considered. So once you consider that a schizophrenic is schizophrenic, yeah, it doesn't predict how long they'll stay in the hospital. Fuck you guys. Sorry, I don't mean to be confrontational, but it's just annoying to hear this your entire fucking life and then just be like, wait, it's your car. I've never owned a car. It's your car that made me this way. Fuck you. And here we got migraines. Yeah, 94% of users experience symptom relief within a 2-hour window. I got migraines every fucking day. Males experiencing greater relief than females, and a trend that younger users experience greater relief than older. Well, look at me. I'm a young male, I think, right? So yeah. It suggests that the whole dried cannabis flower may be an effective medication for the treatment of migraines. Like, let me tell you, I was gonna blow my fucking brains out, and I started smoking weed. It's better. It is better. That shit hurty. And then, yeah, you can you can take CBD to get off weed. You're addicted to weed? Let's get you on some CBD. It's been found clinically to help people quit weed. Hey man, you're addicted to coffee. You're drinking too much. Let's make decaf. Yeah, fuck yeah. It is literally decaf. That's fucking so. I love it. I love that we pay people to do this. But yeah, cool. I'm glad that it works. Higher doses, there's more well tolerated. That's good. Cool. In the first randomized clinical trial of CBD for cannabis use disorder, CBD 400 and 800 milligram were safe and more efficacious than placebo at reducing cannabis use. So yeah, better than placebo. Hell yeah, that's what I want to be. We have 4 minutes to kill. Do you wanna do anything? No. Well, how I'd like to write this article. This is how I started this book. So I haven't read this in fucking years, so don't ask me. What does it take to become both millionaire and genius before the age of 30? According to the case of Tara R. Black, $100,000, an iron will with clear vision, and most importantly, morals twisted enough to completely ruin a man for the sake of entertaining the general American moron. Hailing from the woods of the Northeast, Black had two skills imprinted on him by his motherland. First, the redneck's intuition for nature. Second, the businessman's sensibilities for profit. Tie this together with the artistic American aristocracy, which has nothing important to teach but cleverness, and you have the perfect elements to create a psychopath. I mean, yeah, I feel like it is kind of Stephen King. It's a little bit making fun of Stephen King, but it's also the Ray Bradbury reference. And a psychopath was made by the time he turned 23. As he went from a standard white kid in college to an orphan with a small fortune, and then sprung himself up the rank of every sort of elite by the abuse of some poor man. Still, the mental condition of the villain is nothing compared to that of his victim. His sin was filming of that of what he said was an image of modern man in his nature. In that same interview, he summed up all 3 reasons of his show with one word each: birth, struggle, collapse. A dismal image of humanity, to be sure, but how can an aristocrat see the world any differently? Mr. Man was born a man of book and study. There's no way he couldn't be the condescending ivory tower of misery that he became. But more dismal still is the reality of the show, as there was no manner of special effects that Job had no tongue by season 3. In fact, the scene in the second season of the man using a makeshift knife of his own design to saw off his tongue was completely unedited. The only change Black gave the footage was that as Job sawed and sawed, the film slowed down, and the lens clicked in closer for a better shot. And so, our Black may very well be a psychopath, but as for Job, his poor actor, what can we even call that man? Oedipus? Or would that insult Job's burden? What is worse is that Job suffered without the comfort of being despised. He had no crowd to jeer at him. He had no one to blame him for some plague being cast upon the land. No semblance of that fraternal bond of hatred that softens the lot of even the ill-fated prophet. No, instead Black trapped Job alone in the woods for 3 seasons of lucrative and dramatic television that no self-respecting American could miss. Every time a new episode was released on to Black's own streaming service, thousands of hip kids, I would probably turn that just Gumroad now, and young adults would lock themselves in their room devouring the delicious snuff before the rest of the country got their grubby hands on it through some second service that could have easily doctored it. It made a culture. People bonded over it like it was metal all over again. At first it came out and it was well received because the footage was tame and true to the being of infancy. It was loved unconditionally. It was once season 2 started to release a year later that people started to make a fuss about the ethics of the show. It was in the episode in which Job had brutally beaten himself while screaming out. Alright, we got a minute. But yeah, this show, obviously, we're talking about a guy who sawed off his fucking tongue. That's metal, right? We also got this guy who got expelled from college for selling cocaine. So it is big. That's what you get into, and it's just like kind of like the. I shouldn't spoil it, huh? Yeah, that's the first page. It's available on Patreon. Support us there. What else do I want to talk about today? Do you think I have anything else to talk about today?
Twitter.
Well, yeah, we got the Twitter,
TikTok, and
Patreon.
Link in description.
Yeah, all those are in the description. Please check them out. If you enjoyed today's show, please like, comment, and subscribe. Otherwise, I'm going to leave you off with Stars Hollow, who, again, lovely fucking Des Moines band out of Iowa. They're Iowa indie. and I could not support him enough. I could not say, good job. Good job. I fuck with it. I fuck with the vision. Anyways, I'm going to leave you alone. This has been Jules and Lyle from High Lit, hanging out for the 43rd episode? 44th? 44th episode.
Yeah.
44 hours, baby! Yeah! Alright, see y'all later, and please enjoy the music.
It's like something's in my closet, laughing at me. I'll learn to love it without it. I don't think I could sleep, and I wish that my comforts were comforting to me. I want to live my life, but I'll be here waiting. in the dark and say they should know just where to go. You know, if I had it my way, I'd drive this car into the snow and freeze under the lake to keep us this way. Found all the pieces I need and put them in place. I really don't think I'll get over anything. I really don't think I'll get over the process. It took to last, but I didn't know. But I could guess where your heart was at. And I heard your smile crack. And when you turned to walk away, I could have sworn I heard you say, "Hey man, I get you. I know I get you. But you know I matter too. It's hard to love, but without it, I won't fall asleep. I hope someday my comforts will be comforting. I'm not sure if life is meant to be waiting. Through the windshield, just a pain. You wanna see what it takes to break through and run the other way. I'm not you, should know. I'm not you, should know. I found your dog. Cleaning out under a cushion on the couch, and I give it back. But you said that all you need is your teeth. You're not lying, because with you I don't. It's like barbed wire from your mouth cuts through my skin that you live in. You said it was never mine. It's kind of sad, I think you're right most of the time. Why shouldn't it be that way? I'm codependent, I'm gone with no rest. And you tell me not to worry. You'll be the airbag that stops me from hurting. With a foot on the gas, you say the shattered glass is good for my skin, and I can't deny that it's not wrong. But I don't think you would mind when I look twice.
That's been Stars Hollow. And if you want to hear more, you're going to have to find it on your own. But that's been High Lit. It's Carlisle Fletcher and guest Julian. We'll be back next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, as fucking always. Check out the TikTok, check out the Twitter, check out the Patreon. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And stay connected, fam. Yeah! Alright, see ya. Thanks for checking it out.